If people knew what was happening, I think Henry Ford said it, if people knew what was happening in their banking system, there would be a revolution by morning light. And that's what we need. We need a revolution. And I'm not calling for violence here. I'm calling for a revolution of peace and unity against the international banking cartel called the Federal Reserve. And we can do it.
Well, this promises to be an interesting interview because, as it turns out, Brian and I are not on the same page across the board, but we both do stand for liberty, freedom, and justice for humanity. So stay tuned to find out. Are we all being duped? Is this all just theater? By the way, there's something else Brian and I have in common, Virtual Shield. So you guys know everything you do online these days is tracked, traced, and sold to the highest bidder, but that doesn't mean you need to allow it. With a high-quality virtual private network, you can maintain your privacy, and that's where Virtual Shield comes in. Virtual Shield doesn't keep logs and will never sell your data to a third party. And all month, Virtual Shield is offering 30% off all premium add-ons, including Protection Plus, residential access, monthly maintenance, phone support, and VIP performance plans. And with IdentiSafe, you can block off your computer microphone and camera access from any pesky hacker or spy. So protect yourself. And this month, save 30% off all VPN plans. You have the right to remain private, so do yourself a favor and get Virtual Shield. The link is below this video. Hey friends, welcome back. Thank you so very much for tuning in. I hope you're all having a very happy new year, and may it be a prosperous one to you and your families. At this point, guys, we're all in this mess together. It literally is humanity versus the deep state banksters and their conglomerate of mainstream media mockingbird whores. And we're going to talk about all of it today, including the fascism we see from YouTube, from Patreon, from the social media giants, including the mockingbirds like WAPO. I'll have an expose coming up about WAPO's fascism and the way they operate, which is to lie. And you'll want to stay tuned for that. We're going to talk with Brian today from HighImpact Flix and HighImpact Vlogs. He has been a victim of the fascism of the social media giants, specifically YouTube. And it's my pleasure to welcome him now. Brian, how are you?
Hey, man, how you doing?
I'm doing well. It's nice to finally meet you. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Hey, it's my pleasure. And, I wanted to get you on specifically to congratulate you for getting your main channel back, HighImpact Flix, but you really knocked it out of the park with your backup channel, HighImpact Vlogs. Tell people what happened to you. You had a channel with, I believe, north of 500,000 subscribers, and you went to bed one night, and the next day you woke up, 3 strikes overnight, your channel was gone.
Yeah. It was in perfectly good standing. You know, there's no community guideline strikes, no copyright strikes. And I went to upload a video and noticed I didn't have any. It was more like it happened in real time for me. It was about 9:30 at night. I was uploading a video and I noticed that there was a bar across the screen that said this channel has been terminated. And I was like, what? That has never happened before. So I investigated a little bit more, and sure enough, I found that my channel was struck down. Perfectly good standing, out of the blue, wasn't expecting it, poof, gone. Over 833 videos, 108 million views, 516,000 subscribers, 8 years of work, just gone.
No judge, no jury, just the executioners over at YouTube. And here's the thing. You did manage to get it back, but just recently, it's been what, 7 months it took to get your channel back? And how'd you get it back? Why did they give it to you back? Any explanation, or it just mysteriously popped back up?
It came back up the way it left. There's no explanation. The only explanation I've ever had, I got 2 explanations. One came from the Trusted Flagger program through Twitter. The guy told me that it was taken down because I was promoting illicit drugs, and that was the CBD oil I was promoting, which wasn't illicit. There's nothing illegal about it. It was non-psychoactive CBD oil. It didn't have any THC in it. And to add insult to injury on that, at the same time my channel was taken down, and all throughout the 7.5 months it was down, Google was running ads for CBD oil, the very thing the Trusted Flagger said my channel was taken down for. Now, a month before my channel came back, I got in touch with YouTube support, Google support, and I asked her to check on my main account, and she said that it was taken down because I had accumulated subscribers through bots, which is something I had never heard of Didn't even know you could do that. Something that was totally off the wall and bogus. So I have two different reasons they said my channel was taken down. And then when it came back up, there was no reason for it to come back up. They didn't give me a reason. They didn't give me an explanation. There was no, it's back up in the meantime, and here's what you have to do to make sure it stays up. There was nothing.
Now, let's just talk about tenacity. When something like this happens, first of all, you go into a bit of shock, especially, you like me, we've been at this since, 2010, 2011, and putting up quality content is very important to us. Honest, truthful content. We are the antidote to corporate propaganda. I mean, that's the moniker over at SGT Report specifically. And when this happens to you, you kind of want to go into a little bit of a depression, but, when this happened to me, I created the SGT Report 2 backup channel. But in my case, fortunately, I think because of the outcry to Team YouTube on Twitter, at least in part, I was able to get my channel back, again, with no explanation, but they brought my channel back 3 days later. But in your case, you've been down for 7 months, but you didn't allow them to beat you. You just launched HighImpact Vlogs, right? Your backup channel. That's already got, what, 150, 200,000 subs?
Yeah, it's around 150,000. I haven't even checked lately, but it's almost like the necessity is the mother of invention kind of thing. It's like what you and I do, and what so many other channels out there do in the alternative media scope is we're getting out vital information that really needs to be gotten out. So it's kind of like you don't think about it. I used to be a pilot, and I was doing my my first cross-country trip for my instrument rating, the first time I had ever flown without an instructor. But all the time you're being instructed, they're always telling you, here's what you do in an emergency situation. You have to follow protocol. You have to be very organized. Don't think about anything else. Just think about following, just go by the book. Well, stupid me, I forgot to put the dipstick back when I was doing my walk around, and it blew all my oil out. So I'm at 7,500 feet flying to Knoxville, Tennessee, and my prop just stops. And I thought initially, because my instructor was such a funny guy, and he was always joking around, so I thought he'd just cut off my fuel, just to kind of keep me on my toes. But when I found out my fuel wasn't cut off and I had to do something, and smoke started billowing out from under my rudder pedals, I was just completely focused on getting that plane on the ground. There was no fear. And that's the same thing about this channel is you're kind of depressed a little bit, and it kind of catches you off guard, but it's like, hey, I got a message that I need to get out, and I just need to get busy doing it. So maybe to curtail the depression, because it is so much work, investing all this time and energy and away from the family to do this channel, maybe as kind of I don't know, just maybe to console yourself or whatever, you do it. But it is kind of a procedural thing, you know what I mean? Just trying to get away from the depression, because there's so much uncertainty and unfairness in this censorship that's going on with YouTube and Facebook and Google. The people who are pressing the buttons, who are eliminating your channel, click, it's gone. Don't even think about the fact that people actually make their living doing this. They invest. This is more than a full-time job for me. I know you spend a lot of time with it, and mine is a minimum of 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, plus a full-time job. So yeah, it hurts a little bit, but the show must go on, right?
Yeah, and I think I misspoke. When I say depression, I think when it happened to me, my initial response was shock and then anger. I mean,
Yeah.
I was outraged, right, that this had happened, because it is unjust. And these button pushers in these trusted flagger programs, these people at the Southern Poverty Law Center, liberal George Soros-backed think tanks. These people are funded by liberals. These people are funded by globalists, and somehow they are the truth arbiters. I mean, isn't that the funniest thing about this whole thing? They want to attack us as being fake news, right? We hear that meme for the past couple of years. Anybody in the alternative truth media is fake news. Well, who are the arbiters of truth? I mean, just look at the fascism we see over at Patreon. Patreon pulled the plug on Sargon of Akkad for absolutely no good reason. He used a bad word that he ought not have used, in my opinion, but it wasn't even on Patreon. It wasn't even on his own YouTube channel. He was a guest on somebody else's YouTube channel, and the trusted flaggers went digging for a reason to take down Sargon of Akkad, who is a very lucid, balanced presenter of information. I like that guy. I think he does a
And
great job.
and to add insult to the grave irony of the entire thing is if you go to Patreon and you put in their search bar that N word that Sargon of Akkad used, 9 pages of that word come up on their own platform. So it's hypocrisy in the extreme.
Yeah, and it's the same hypocrisy we see from YouTube. I've made this point time and time again, Brian, that what we see from YouTube are these hard to interpret community guidelines which are selectively enforced. And I think the single best example of that is that video, This is America, which has 400 or 500 million views, all fully monetized with the best possible advertisers, McDonald's, IHOP, Boeing. This guy has made millions of dollars in revenue from that video. And in that music video, it shows the simulated murder of a blindfolded man and the simulated mass murder of a church choir.
Yep.
And guess who's watching that thing? Teenagers. I don't think there's a better example of a double standard. They haven't even made that violent video age restricted. And it violates their community guidelines. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that is the perfect example of selective outrage and selective censorship. You can't even get more classic than that. And I think it's up to almost 500 million views now.
Yeah, fully monetized. It's just an outrage. Donald Glover, I guess, is the musician's name, who goes by Childish Gambino. And certainly it is a childish video. It's a sick video. But of course, it was lauded by the mainstream media. And in fact, that gets me to another point here. I got an email. I'm going to share this in an expose coming up here in the next few days. A while back, I got an email from a guy named Craig Timberg. Now, he's a quote-unquote journalist for the Washington Post. And I knew right away that something was up because the Washington Post certainly doesn't want to help anybody in the truth media. But Craig said to me that they were going to do a expose on why some YouTube channels have been terminated, like mine, and he wanted to hear my story. And I refused to talk to him on the phone because I wanted to have everything on record. So we corresponded only via email. And I'll do an expose on this because I knew he was lying. They then came out with a hit piece on the alternative media. And he didn't have anything on me because I didn't give him any good ammo to try to hang me out to dry with, which is what he was after. But he misrepresented what the story would be about to try to get me to talk. And that's what these people do. They are duplicitous. And at the end of the day, man, how do you think these people sleep at night? Like, I don't get it. I guess we've seen examples of who these people are in those Project Veritas videos. They're just kind of soulless people that are devoid of a moral compass. Yeah. And it just shocks me that people like that operate in this world and are in high positions of power.
And you think about it, you think about follow the money, because that's the best way to get to the bottom of virtually any crime or any wrongdoing. And you think about what YouTube's doing, and you look over the entire course of their censorship, and it's doing nothing but hurting them. So I don't even understand it. It's almost like they're so checked out, they're so conscience seared that it doesn't even matter. They just have to get rid of those alternative voices.
Yeah, well, and again, getting back to what Patreon did to Sargon of Akkad, it has caused quite an outrage in the alternative media. I know Jordan Peterson and Dave Rubin are now working together to try to come up with a platform that will compete against Patreon. I tried to open an account over at Subscribestar after all of that happened to Sargon of Akkad, but then you'll notice that PayPal pulled the plug on Subscribestar, and not long after that, Subscribestar stopped taking on new accounts. So now that's not even an alternative. But it just shows us how Silicon Valley and these big social media giants, along with PayPal and the banksters, all work together to try to break the backs of those who are in the truth business.
And what's scary about this whole, I totally agree with everything you're saying. What's scary about this whole censorship thing is if you look at Gab.ai, who's basically the perfect answer for Twitter censorship. Matter of fact, if you're not on Gab, you should get on it. But Gab was shut down by their own ISP. So this even goes beyond Silicon Valley. If enough people put enough pressure on internet service providers, they'll just shut your whole website down. That's how bad this is getting. It's almost like there will be no escape if we don't really take charge of this situation.
Right. What do you think can be done to rein in these social media giants? Do they need to be regulated as public utilities? I mean, we really don't want more government in our lives. We want less government in our lives. But at the same time, we don't want these fascists to get away with selective censorship. So what is the answer?
Well, it's almost like if you look at Google, when I look at Google or Facebook, you're basically looking into the eyes of government. So when somebody says, well, we need an internet bill of rights, I shy away from that because I think about what they did with the oil monopolies back in the, at the turn of the century. When they started breaking up the oil monopolies, they only empowered them. Because what happened with each monopoly is they just became separate companies. It was the same company with different names. So I'm not sure what the answer is, except somehow we need to, what they are effective in doing, what mainstream media and the government is effective in doing is three things. This is deceiving us, distracting us, and dividing us. If we continue to stay divided and bickering over these little things that we can easily work out by ourselves and not come to grips with some main principles, like it's never okay to initiate unjust force or violence on people who haven't done anything wrong. I think we can all check that box right there. Or no one has a higher claim over your life and property than you do. Check. Or treat others the way you'd want to be treated. Check. If we can all get behind those three things and we can unite against these big giants, I don't think we would need government, because the voice of the people would be so strong. And I'm talking about even liberal people, because what liberals and leftists do not understand is that the sword of censorship does not just swing one way. Eventually, it's going to come after them too. And we need to, for some way, we need to get that message across to them. If we can, then I think there's a really good chance for us to unite against all this garbage.
Yeah, I agree. Well, we'll stay in the fight because that's who we are. We're fighters, and we're fighting against the deep state New World Order. At the end of the day, you and I may not agree on everything, but I bet we agree on a lot more than we disagree with each other about, especially as it relates to liberty. The only reason for government at all, I believe it was Thomas Jefferson who said, the only reason for government is to protect our liberties. That's it. That's the only role of government. And so I think you're probably for less government. I'm for less government. And we definitely both stand against tyranny of the deep state. Let me ask you this. What do you think was the biggest or some of the biggest underreported or unreported stories of 2018? Which are the biggest stories that you think were glossed over by the deep state Mockingbird mainstream media?
Well, I think the biggest story that's always glossed over and always hidden and put in the corner is the international banking cartel needs to be stopped. We need to treat these people as the criminals they are. We just need to take a banking note out of our pockets and realize that that's the property of the Federal Reserve, and it's a note of debt. And if we continue to signal the clarion call of what is actually going on in this world, like Amschel Rothschild said, he says, give me control over a nation's money supply, and I care not who makes its laws. So one of the roots of evil, we talk about, they say money is the root of all evil. Really, it's the love of money that's the root of all evil. Let's go after the people that are the extreme lovers of money. And that's the international banking cartel who set up this petrodollar Ponzi scheme that's controlling everything that we see, everything that we purchase, everything that we see around us has been affected by the international banking cartel. That is year after year after year, it's underreported. And the longer we go on and the longer this note of debt is normalized, the more in the dark the masses will be about what's really going on. Because without the funding of this fake money, it's really just counterfeit currency where they print it out of thin air. Basically, they don't even bother to print much anymore. It's all zeros and ones on digitized screens. But we need to get back to the basics. The basics are the only way that the government is empowered to do the things it does, the war machine, the military-industrial complex, the giving all this foreign aid, the money that we don't even have, it all stems from the international banking cartel known as the Federal Reserve. So that is the most, and it's always the most underreported story.
I think you're right. That's not what I would have said, but I think you're right. And, they are the source of all our problems. It's something that I've covered and will continue to cover. It's something I covered from the very beginnings of my channel, the privately owned Federal Reserve, the Rothschild banking cartel. These are the people that have plagued us from the start of our country and plague us to this date. And you'll notice that President Trump is very vocal against the Fed, unlike just about any other president we've ever seen, maybe with the exception of John F. Kennedy. And President Trump has said that the biggest threat to his agenda, the biggest threat to our economy, is the Fed. And then what does the Mockingbird mainstream media do? They spin it because they know most Americans don't understand that the Federal Reserve is a privately owned banking cartel.
And the second story, if I was gonna pick a second story, and it's not talked about much at all on mainstream media, well, maybe some, but not much, and they don't really treat it with the seriousness that it deserves, is the Real ID Act is going to go into effect on October 1st, 2020. No, you will not be able to get on a domestic or an international flight, any flight at all, unless you have your license upgraded with the Real ID in the top right-hand corner.
That's a good one. And you know what disturbs me about that? We could all put an end to that if we all refused to get it, because it would shut down the country for a week or two and nobody would fly, and then it would get reversed.
Yep,
because
exactly.
It's a slippery slope from that Real ID into the mark of the beast chip. Well, you must get the chip now in your hand or your forehead or your baby's born. And so now we're going to implement a new policy. You don't need to get the ID card because you get a chip inserted at the hospital when the baby's born. It's a slippery slope into that absolute New World Order despotism. What is your opinion on that? Because I think President Trump is certainly playing his role in allowing Real ID to come into fruition as opposed to stopping it.
Yeah, actually, he is bringing that into fruition, and that concerns me greatly, and it really should concern everybody. Like you said, if we all got together just for a week or two, that's really all it would take to send the signal to the airlines: is don't manipulate us into this Real ID thing. We're not going to fly with you unless you guys reverse this. We could do this. This is something that's doable. This is not pie in the sky. We can unite on this. But it doesn't look like anybody's interested because mainstream media is not getting it out, and it's up to us to get it out.
Yeah. The other thing I was going to say, I think the biggest stories of last year, of course, the biggest story maybe of our lifetimes, is this deep state coup against the sitting president. The Mueller, Comey, Clapper, Brennan, Clinton, DNC, Russiagate coup to topple the sitting president, and before that to try to topple then candidate Donald Trump through FISA, illegal FISA wiretapping, illegal FISA warrants. I think the deep state attempt to topple this president is the biggest story of last year. But the second biggest story, Brian, I think are the California fires that I know for a fact were sparked in part by PG&E, a Rothschild-controlled enterprise, a public utility, people think, but it's actually a Rothschild utility out there in California. And others believe that DEWs, directed energy weapons, have played a role in those fires. And I think what happened to Paradise, the devastation and total destruction of Paradise, California, is the most underreported story of 2018.
Well, do you have the capability to put that initial spark that actually started the Paradise fire up on the screen?
Yes, let me look for it, and
find that. I'll talk about it a little bit. But what amazes me is that if we have satellite, let me put myself in the position of a mainstream media, say, reporter or journalist, and what I would be doing is I would be scouring alternative media sites, because you get stuff from alternative media, and a lot of my listeners know that I am not for Alex Jones. I am for Alex Jones. I'm against him being deplatformed. I'm not for everything he says, but I do realize there's a value in Alex Jones. There are things that Alex Jones brings out that mainstream media doesn't bring out. So what I'm saying is, if I was a journalist for mainstream media, I would be looking at the Alex Joneses, the SGT reports, the HighImpact Flix, and I'd be gathering some information. One of the pieces of information I put on my channel was, you can see satellite imagery, and this comes from the YouTube channel called Mike Morales. He uncovered this. The satellite imagery of where something shot up out of the earth to quite a height, and then came back down, almost like something was launched. That was the very point at which that fire started. That's video evidence of a catastrophic fire that killed, I don't know how many people now. They might be suppressing that number, but destroyed an entire city. And mainstream media is not going to talk about it, not going to at least display that image and ask a couple questions.
And to this day, not one news network, not CNN, not MSLSD, not ABC, CBS, or Fox News has aired this footage, investigated this footage, or asked about what the hell we're seeing in this footage.
Yeah, I saw that video from Mike Morales, and I saw it even before you put it on your channel, but kudos to you for putting it on your channel. The coverage that I provided about the California fires, though, is just the fact that these people were surrounded by fires. We've never seen fires spread that quickly,
Mhm.
with that intensity, melting engine blocks and aluminum wheels. Now, explain to me how a forest fire can selectively not burn trees in some cases, take houses down to their foundations, and melt the alloy wheels in cars. Brian, how is that possible?
And not burn the surrounding trees around them. All the green, there's so much greenery around these trees, around the houses that are destroyed, and the cars that are just melting in the streets. Yeah, I don't know how that's possible. Not naturally.
So I think it's the biggest story of 2018 to a large degree, because I always wondered, how would they implement UN Agenda 21? How are they going to get right-thinking people out of their homes and herded into big cities? And now we know the answer. If they burn down entire cities like this, and then the insurance companies come in and say, oh, well, here's your check, but you can't rebuild here because it's too risky. And this is the new. We're going to see more fires like this. So this is now an off-limits area.
Mhm.
We can see UN Agenda 21 coming into fruition very, very quickly.
Yep.
All right. Well, where should we go from here?
I want to kind of go into some deep waters here real quick. A lot of my listeners know that I'm not for presidents. I'm not for government, and I believe, and I know you believe differently on this, and I know that we can talk rationally about this. Nobody's going to get mad, and we can
Oh, no, yeah, go for
have
it.
an honest debate. A lot of people go, well, why aren't you for President Trump? You know, you should be for the president. Here are the issues that I have with Trump. Number one, Hillary and Bill should really be in prison. There's tons of evidence against them. And this kind of leads me into questioning, is the president really the leader of the free world? Is he really in charge? Because I'm thinking, if I was president, I'm at the top of the heap. What I say goes. And yeah, I know there's the legislative branch and the judicial branch and the executive, and they all have to work together. But you know, there is such a thing called an executive order. If a president can pardon somebody and get them out of prison, then surely he can say, you know what, here's my executive order. We're going to investigate Hillary right now. We're going to investigate Bill. We're going to investigate Barack Obama, and we're going to throw their butts in jail. That's my first question. The second is, what's with the civil asset forfeiture? Why would Trump initiate and okay and endorse civil asset forfeiture? The third thing is what we just talked about was why the real ID? Come on, that's a pretty tyrannical thing. So those are just the first things that I would talk to a Trump supporter about. And I believe that if people are open to just having an honest discussion and debate and really getting to the bottom of the truth and working things out with the lenses of freedom, completely with the lenses of freedom, is how let me just ask you, how does it work out to be for civil asset forfeiture, for real ID, or not imprison criminals like Hillary and Bill and Obama? How does that shake out to somebody who's interested in freedom?
Well, it doesn't. And I think that there are plenty of laws. My wife and I talk about this a lot. The entire criminal justice system is largely an injustice system, and it's set up to ensnare those largely who can't even afford an attorney. So this whole public defender system is a joke. These public defenders aren't out to defend anybody. It is
Right.
a hamster's wheel that they get a lot of people in, and it's a revolving door of profit, especially when we have these for-profit prisons. So I think we need to see prison reform. Here's the thing. I like to see our cup as half full, because otherwise I would be depressed every single day and I wouldn't be able to get out of bed.
Yeah.
So as it relates to President Trump, you know, we can point to so many good things like prison reform. Like, well, for instance, you mentioned CBD oil earlier. I think that the federal government just legalized hemp.
Mhm.
All right. So here's a government fighting back against the banksters' tyranny, the Hearst-Morgan tyranny, going back to the early 1900s, when they wanted to outlaw hemp because they owned the forests and they owned the newspapers, which disseminated the mockingbird crap. So they criminalized hemp, which, by the way, if they hadn't done that, we wouldn't have oceans filled with plastic right now.
Yep.
So these petroleum companies, the big banks, the big money, the deep state aligned against President Trump goes all the way back to Morgan and Hearst that criminalized hemp. So we can point to some good things that this administration is doing. I think the problem is, though, the deep state is so damn deep. And at every turn, there are still entrenched deep state criminals at the FBI, at the Department of Justice, at the Department of State. And I don't know how any one man can reverse that. And I know I'm being a little simplistic to even think that it's possible to reverse that. But I have to have hope at the end of the day, and I have to point to some good things that are happening that I know wouldn't be happening if that witch were in the White House. Because the easiest thing to do, Brian, I've said time and time again, the easiest thing for the deep state, the New World Order, the Rothschilds to have done was to put their puppet in the White House, and then we would all be enduring what the French are enduring and what the Germans are enduring under Merkel and Macron right now. Open borders, seizing the guns, higher taxes. I mean, it would all be happening, and it would be the final nail in our coffin.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that in some ways Trump is controlled by the deep state? When I say deep state, I'm just talking about the regular state that's always been there, which is the Federal Reserve. We know they own pretty much everything. They control everything.
Well, you know what? A lot of people have made that argument, and that he's just the flip side to the same coin as Hillary. And I just don't see it, because I see him take his case to the American people via Twitter every single day, and then I see the deep state horror media hang him out to dry for basically telling the truth. And it's the type of transparency we've never seen from any other president. Because here's the thing, and I agree with you about Hillary being arrested. If we don't see the arrests of high-profile deep state criminals this year and soon, if we don't see the indictment of Hillary Clinton, if we don't see the indictments of people like John Brennan, people like Debbie Wasserman Schultz and the Podesta brothers go down, then all hope is lost. And I guess if Q is to be believed, which I know you're not a Q guy either, you think Q is probably, what do you think about Q? Do you think that's all a farce? Because I heard Alex Jones, I was working out the other day, and I was listening to Alex Jones specifically because I want his take on stuff, because I know so many people have turned on Alex Jones at this point. And he said that Q, this is literally a quote from him, Q we now know was a Democratic deep state psyop. If there's one thing I know about Q, it is not a Democrat psyop. If anything, Q has shined the light of truth on the criminality coming from the Democrats and the deep state.
How did Alex Jones try to substantiate that?
He basically didn't. He just said because of Jerome Corsi, and at one point Q may have been legitimate, but then it got infiltrated, and then he referred to it as a Democrat deep state psyop. So, but he's been off the Q bandwagon for a long time now, saying that, oh, you're not a bad person if you followed Q. You're just stupid because Q is a LARP. And I don't believe Q is a LARP, but your thoughts on Q?
My thoughts on Q comes from the actual Q Trust the Plan video. I think it was called Q, the Plan to Save the World. The whole video sets up perfectly, what's wrong with this world. You've got the deep state, you've got, the Federal Reserve banking cartel, you've got criminals in the White House like Hillary and Bill and Obama. So, there's a lot of truth to that, but at the end it says trust the plan, and the plan is to trust higher up, the good guys in government. I personally don't believe you can be a good guy in government, because government to me means mind control, which is the etymology of the word. And government lived out is the concept that it's okay to initiate unjust force or violence on people who haven't done anything wrong, i.e., let's just talk about the drug war. The drug war is not a war on drugs, it's a war on people. So I try to look at it through Jefferson says the price of freedom is eternal vigilance, and indifference to this notion is the means by which the people will secure their own oppression. So what's the best way to secure freedom as opposed to securing oppression? Well, it's to look through things with the lens of liberty. If you're looking at government through the lens of liberty, then you automatically see tyranny, because that's what government is. So when I see somebody say, trust the plan, and the plan is to trust the good guys in government so that they can weed out the bad guys in government, to me, government is government. There is no, it's almost like trust the good cancer cells will get rid of the bad cancer cells. That's how I view it. Because when you have somebody in there, it should have alarmed everybody when Trump was sitting next to Dianne Feinstein and he said, take the guns first. That should have just set off. I don't even remember Obama saying that.
Dianne, if you could add what you have also, and I think you can, into the bill.
Yeah. So Joe, are you ready?
Can you do that? Joe, can you do that, Pat? Can you add some of the things? You're not going to agree with me.
Yeah, if you help.
Well, no, I'll help, but can you add what Amy and what Diane have? Can we add them in? And I know you can add what John
Yeah, I
has.
have another domestic violence bill that's very narrow, and it's about dating partners, and a number of states have just
I would
enacted
say
it with
this,
Republican
we're going to get
support.
it passed.
Yeah.
We're going to get it passed. If you can add domestic violence paragraphs, pages into this bill, I'm all for it.
But for some reason, people are glazed over because Trump is the outsider. And I just don't agree with that, because I think that when you have an election process, whether it's from the Republican side or the Democratic side, whoever they throw into the mix, everybody, it's a fixed deck. It's a rigged game. No matter who you vote for, like Stalin said, it doesn't matter who they vote for. Every vote is a vote for us. So I view Trump in that same vein, because I see him doing the exact same thing. He increased the funding of the military-industrial complex. He's added to our national debt, and he's on pace to be the biggest adder to the national debt of any president that we've had yet. Bigger than Bush, bigger than Obama. He's already dropped more bombs. He's on pace to drop more bombs than Obama. So in action, I don't see a difference between what Trump's doing. Yeah, is he doing some things like, does the economy look better? Yeah, it looks better. But those to me are almost side issues when you're killing people in foreign countries and still adding to the drug war and increasing the coffers of the military-industrial complex.
Yeah, about that exchange between him and Feinstein, I made a video specifically about that because I was irate when I saw that exchange too, and I did criticize President Trump when he made that statement, and because he vowed to protect our Second Amendment, which is the most important amendment. Without the Second Amendment, we don't have a First Amendment, basically, at this point. Let me ask you, though, before we go back, you said something about government, all government's bad, and all people in government are bad. I'm paraphrasing. I want to cite Barbara Honegger, who used to be high-level government insider. She used to be in the military, and she has helped spearhead truth regarding 9/11, and now we're seeing a 9/11 grand jury being impaneled. But you said something about Trump being on pace to drop more bombs than any other president. Can you quantify that? Because that's actually news to me. Where is that happening? Because, he's trying to bring troops home from Afghanistan and Syria and Iraq, and he's trying to do so many things that we would have wanted, for instance, Ron Paul to do, right? Let's bring the military home. Let's protect our own borders. Let's put America first. Can you quantify that on the bombs being dropped?
Yeah, I think it's something like in the area of 200% more bombs already on pace than Obama dropped as far as drone strikes. And I can get you that. I can get you the exact link when the show's over, so if you want to put it in your show notes.
Sure. Yeah, I will. And because I think it's important that we hold this president to task, because I'm not just about, trust the plan, but just to push back a little bit on that. Can we agree that there is a deep state plan to usurp this president and to topple him? Can we at least agree that there is a group of really, really bad people, I would call them the satanic deep state cabal, who are aligned against this president?
I would only say the whole thing it's the premise of the deep state and the shallow state is that it's okay to initiate unjust force and violence on people who haven't done anything wrong. So I don't really make a differentiation between the deep state. I say deep state because people can relate to that, and that's the term that's being thrown out.
Well, and by the way, that was a term coined by Peter Dale Scott. So he should get credit for, he's the first one who referred to the deep state. And now it's so common as to almost be meaningless. But so you think the whole thing's theater, basically. What we're seeing is theater.
Yeah, I do. Because see, I know one thing Trump can do. He can make an executive order to eliminate the branch of the Homeland Security called the TSA. The TSA is a money pit. And it's even mainstream media reported on TSA, it costs over $9 billion a year to operate, and 95% of guns and bombs that they're supposed to be stopping from getting onto departing flights make their way onto departing flights. So TSA is an utter failure. Not only that, they haven't stopped one single terrorist, but they have caught over 400 TSA agents stealing people's luggage, so TSA is nothing but bad all the way around. Besides that, TSA is the very epitome of breaking the Fourth Amendment. When you walk into an airport, they are there to violate your rights. If I was the president of the United States, TSA, gone. Executive order. Sorry, we don't need it. They're not doing any good. And studies show that. So that shows me that we don't really need a deep state. The shallow state is enough to secure any kind of oppression or tyranny.
Yeah, I can see your view on that. And again, from a cup half full perspective, the way I've approached it, in that video you cited, Trust the Plan or Cue the Plan to Save the World by Joe Messapos, my take on that was that he is describing what he believes to be the counter-coup plan. So if we, at least from my perspective, the deep state, the satanic deep state aligned against this president, they didn't have a backup plan. They never thought she would lose. That I firmly believe. I don't think that this was all part of a much bigger plan to just get the people on the right or constitutionalists and libertarians to stand down and accept tyranny by giving us Trump. Because again, the much easier thing to do would be just to shove the New World Order down our throats like they're doing in France and Germany. And what we're seeing is a lot of pushback now in France and in Germany to the bureaucrats in Brussels and the EU and the Rothschild plan for this New World Order, where they are telling us, literally Merkel saying, you have to be prepared to give up your sovereignty. Mm-hmm. We have to be prepared now to be ruled by banking bureaucrats in Brussels. And the people are saying, what? We didn't sign up for this. Her approval rating, all-time low. Macron's approval rating, all-time low. So I think that, well, if you're right and I'm wrong, I still think this whole plan is backfiring against the New World Order because people are starting to wake up and reject this despotism.
There are so many ironies and so many disconnects that I can't put together in my pea brain, but it's one of the big ironies is the thing the first president of the United States said. He said, government is not eloquence, it's not reason, it's force. And like fire, it's a dangerous servant and a fearful master. It's like, okay, so what do you want? Do you want the dangerous servant or do you want the fearful master? Because both of them are going to pretty much lead to your destruction and demise. So I'm glad you said that thing about you doing a video on what alarmed you about Trump's stand toward the Second Amendment when he was sitting next to Dianne Frankenstein. I mean, can you even get more evil than Dianne Feinstein?
No, so, maybe Hillary, but that, I mean,
yeah, it's two peas in a pod, huh? But I'm glad you said that about that, and I'm super excited that we can even have this conversation and show people that two owners of two channels disagree on something pretty important, but we can do it in a way that leads to greater learning for all of us. And I know I don't have all the answers. I'm willing to learn from anybody, but it does make me question why the civil asset forfeiture, why the increase in the coffers of the military-industrial complex. Eisenhower warned us about the dangers of the military-industrial complex. Why would any president after him not be, so cautious about giving the military-industrial complex money? We know they create wars. We know they kill our people. We know they take our money. They take our funds. Even the counterfeit Federal Reserve notes we have in our pocket, they're bleeding us of those in their headlong desire to plunge our future generations into transgenerational debt slavery. Another thing is why are we increasing the national debt? That should be minimized, Mm-hmm. So these are all questions that I have that shows me that whether Hillary or Bill Clinton or Obama took a third term or Trump, the same things are happening.
Yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic because I'm choosing to be, because for me personally, the alternative is trying to evacuate out of this country. But then at the end of the day, where do you go? But I literally, Brian, was concerned about that when I thought they were going to just give the White House to Hillary. Mm-hmm. I didn't think there was any way that Trump was going to be able to beat her because I figured they would steal the election. But I mean, I could see the rallies for him where 20, 30,000 people would show up, or the speaking engagements with him while he was running. 10,000 people, would run to an international airport hangar, and she couldn't fill the corner of a gym. But I really thought they'd steal it for her. But at the end of the day, I hear what you're saying, and I have friends in the space, people like Chris Duane, a buddy of mine who's a big silver guy with his silver shield coins, and we're close friends, and he doesn't believe any of it. He thinks it's all theater too. And I respect that view. I absolutely get it. And I frankly think that probably the ship has sailed on our republic when they made the United States a corporation. I mean, I don't know how any sitting president can reverse that. So there are dirty deeds done behind the scenes that probably can never be undone. And maybe it is all theater, but at the end of the day, I pray that there is a plan to try to return the power to the people, which is what President Trump said he was doing when he was inaugurated.
But we are transferring power from Washington, D.C., and giving it back to you, the people.
He said, this isn't like any other presidency. We're going to return the power to the people.
And let me be clear. I have that hope too. I have hope, but I do know that the powers that be capitalize on two things. Number one, the Hegelian dialectic: problem, reaction, solution. Create the problem, wait for the expected reaction, and give the pre-planned solution. But the second thing is, they prey on the hope of people, and that hope is what keeps us to the voting booths year after year. Oh, this guy will change it. Okay, this guy. Okay, now it's going to be this guy. And so they realize it's almost like a gambler. He puts his money into the machine and he pulls that lever and he goes, okay, I lost this time, but I know if I hit that jackpot, all my losses will be completely erased. I understand that.
I know, brother. But here's the thing, and I totally agree with you, because trust me, I've thought about this a lot. When you're being hopeful like me and trying to spread a message of hope and point to the good things that the president is doing, you run the risk of being the sucker. If this is all theater, then I was naive not to be in your camp. And I'm not aligned against your camp. I can fully see your view. I get it. I just think that, I know what I was going to say. When you take a look at past administrations, here's what we got time and time again. When George W. Bush came in to replace Clinton, and we knew about all the crimes of Bill Clinton, George W. Bush said, we're not going to look backward, we're going to move forward, right? And then when Bush got out and Obama came in, Obama said the exact same thing. We're not going to look back, we're going to move forward. Together as people, we're not going to look backward, we're going to move forward.
Right. Same
thing would have happened with Clinton had she gotten in. She would have said that about Obama. But what did we get? We got Trump pointing to people like Obama, Uranium One, the crimes of the wiretapping, pointing at Hillary Clinton via Twitter, constantly saying, why is she not in jail yet? Why hasn't she been arrested? He's not saying, we're not going to look back, we're going to move forward. He's not glossing over these people's crimes like we've seen with all these past presidents.
Right.
So that's the good news, the way I look at it. One last thing. You mentioned problem, reaction, solution, the Hegelian dialectic. I don't think there's a better example of that that's affected our lives more than 9/11. The 9/11 false flag operation. Do you agree? Is there a bigger event in our lifetimes than that one?
I can't think of one. That was a heavy duty one right there.
Yeah. And did you hear about the 9/11 grand jury that's being impaneled in New York? It's a federal grand jury. Yeah, it's being impaneled. And AE 9/11 Truth, Richard Gage, I had him on recently, and he reported that along with Barbara Honegger and an attorney that they brought on to speak with us as well. Yeah, a federal grand jury is being impaneled to investigate the demolitions, my word, but in their word, to investigate the destruction of World Trade Centers 1, 2, and get this, 7, Building 7, which most people don't even know collapsed that day.
Yep. That would be awesome. Yeah, just start with Building 7. What happened there?
Yep. So there is some good news out there, but at the end of the day, we both will agree on this. We have to see high-level arrests.
Yep.
We have to see high-level arrests this year. If we don't see some of these people arrested, indicted, and arrested, then I'll be quickly moving back over to your camp.
And I would just say one thing before we wrap this up is, please don't, whoever's listening to this broadcast right here, don't take for granted, just because it's cliche, the phrase "united we stand, divided we fall." If we stay divided, we certainly will fall. That's not a threat. That's just a fact. And just to reiterate, what mainstream media and the government want to do is distract, deceive, and divide us. If we stay divided, if we stay disconnected from each other and don't come together against censorship, if we don't come together against the Federal Reserve, if we don't come together against the wrongs that are done in this world, we're done for. We are literally done for, because the Rothschild Zionist banking cartel is powerful, and they know they're far outnumbered. If you've ever seen the video by Larkin Rose called "The Tiny Dot," I have his permission to re-upload it to my channel, and I think I will. But if you look at how many people there are and how small a dot the enforcers represent, we could pummel them in a day. If people knew what was happening, I think Henry Ford said it, if people knew what was happening in their banking system, there would be a revolution by morning light. And that's what we need. We need a revolution. And I'm not calling for violence here. I'm calling up for a revolution of peace and unity against the international banking cartel called the Federal Reserve. And we can do it. We can come against Google. We can come against Facebook and Twitter. We have the money that they want. And if we don't give it to them, and if we not unite against them, against all this censorship, we win. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I have seen that video from Larkin Rose. It's a fantastic video, and it makes you realize how much power we have. You know, where we go one, we go all. And at the end of the day, folks, these Zionist Rothschild central banks are in just about every single country on the planet, with the exception of maybe 3 countries left that don't have Rothschild central banks. And above them sit the IMF, the World Bank, and the Bank for International Settlements. And that is the New World Order Illuminati bankster system. That is the true enemy of humanity. Hey, Brian, I can't thank you enough for coming on. I really, really hold your work in high esteem. I share a lot of your work on my channel, thephaser.com. And just remind us about the 2 channels and give us advice. Give me advice. I have a backup channel. Do you think the smartest thing to do is when you make a new video, post them on the backup channel and the main channel? Because right now I just put the new content on the main channel, and I've now neglected the backup channel. What is going to be your approach? Are you going to try to resuscitate HighImpact Flix? Are you going to stick with vlogs? What are you going to do?
Yeah, I want to be careful trying like duplicating material, because there's this new YouTube. I don't know if you've seen it. There's a new YouTube law rule called I think it's called duplicate
content. Yeah.
Duplicate content.
Yeah, I just talked about that with Dave Janda. They said that he can't get his channel monetized. 11 months ago, he applied for monetization. This is Dave Janda over at Operation Freedom. Brilliant guy. And they finally got back to him and said, nope, because of duplicate content. And the sources they cited are other channels that steal his content and upload it and have monetized his content. And they allow those channels to stand, and they say, nope, you can't monetize your own original content.
Yeah, right. And under that reason, that's why my HighImpact Vlogs channel is completely demonetized, because they said I use duplicate content, which I don't. So yeah, I think it's good to upload, but not the same content on different channels. And you're on BitChute as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you have it hooked into where when you upload a video on YouTube, it automatically goes to BitChute?
Yes, and it's my biggest compliment to BitChute ever. I love BitChute for that reason.
Me too. So what I would suggest to people is get on SGT Reports. If you haven't, please do it right now. Get on his secondary channel and his BitChute channel. Make sure you're following him on Twitter, Facebook, and all the social media, and do the same for me. But it's super important to get on these alternate channels, because unfortunately we're going to need them one day.
Yeah. Well, I really want to thank you for what you do, and I really do appreciate your voice. I'm very sincere in that. All right, guys, our guest has been Brian from HighImpact Flix and HighImpact Vlogs, and I will link both of those awesome channels in the more information section below this video, so please go over and subscribe to Brian. Brian, thanks so much.
Hey, I appreciate it, Sean. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, my pleasure. And guys, if you're still with us, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for sharing this information within your sphere of influence on social media. And thank you from the bottom of my heart for your support. Thank you so much for tuning in. And for real news 24/7, the antidote to corporate propaganda, visit us at sgtreport.com. God bless. Bye-bye.
They spelled out in detail how they were going to do it. The shadow government, a network of central banks, a graduated income tax, tax-exempt foundations to be able to shelter their own wealth from taxation. The taxation they were going to put against earnings, earned income, the mark of the middle class. They spelled all of these things out